You know, one reason why I watch movies is because it inspires me to come back to this channel and make a video, which is why, after watching Pacific Rim, I wanted to talk about the mecha hack. And I'm a big fan of giant mech versus kaiju monsters material like Gundam Wing and Pacific Rim. Even the second one I think is it's all right, but first one obviously the best. Thankfully they stopped at two. But Power Rangers and giant robot fights occasionally in each episode. Um, various Gundam Wing, the older ones, not like anything recently. I came across this. This is the Mecha Hack. It is based on, or made with, as it says, with the Black Hack, which is an OSR. Now, I don't own the Black Hack to give a, firm comparison. And this is not a review or a tutorial on how to play this specific game. On my channel, The Lex Gray Show, I'm Lex Gray, and I have cats who are absolutely hilarious. I don't know if you can't hear them, they're running around doing the usual thing. But I like to do explorations of things that I own or find out in the wild. The wild being RPG stores or bookstores. And from what I can gather, and through a good read of the Mecha Hack, it is OSR meets basically Pacific Rim. Very narrative driven. There are rules, but not like a lot to bog it down. Basically, if you're expecting like tactical fighting, measurements, different weapon statistics, this is probably not for you. This is definitely OSR, an OSR feel, but enough to make it cinematic. So let's jump in and we'll do a page turner to see just if this is for you. So here is the Mecha Hack, a role-playing game of Titanic war machines by Absolute Tabletop, made with the Black Hack. This is not a war game. This is an RPG. So you essentially play a pilot slash the mech itself. So there is a combo there. It emphasizes that those two are one and the same. Here's the table of contents. You have about 40 plus pages. It's a fairly thin book. Probably half an hour read or an hour if you want to look into it deeply. But we're going to go through most pages. Game mastering tools is a good section for solo play, which is why I picked it up. So the rules are light enough for solo play. The core mechanic is testing your attribute. It is a... If you have cats, I'm sure you guys can relate. I don't know if you hear them playing with a bag. Anyways, this is a D20 roll under system. Now, typical OSR, what you're familiar with, roll under systems, like Karen, for example, you want to roll at or below. This one, it's roll below, not equal to. If you rolled a number or above, it's a failure. It does have advantage and disadvantage. So D20, it does have modifiers. It does include 4 attributes. So it has the usual OSR characteristics, but in the blender. So let's go to the how to play section. You have the 4 attributes. You have power, mobility, system, and presence. There's your advantage and disadvantage. You roll your 2d20 and choose the favorable result for advantage and the opposite for disadvantage. You have your modifying rules. You have actions. You have move, attack, test, use, pilot. You have order of actions, time, and turns, so the game master can track times. On this next page, which is page 6, we have tactical distances. So here is a good spot to figure out how you want to do combat. Essentially, This emphasizes mostly theater of the mind, the imagination, but it does include squares for tactical play, tabletop. So if you prefer a visual, if the game master prefers a visual of combat, this section I recommend copying. So you have range, close, near, far, distance, distant, actions required to comply with those ranges, meters for conversion, and squares for the tabletop. There's moving to distance, like I said, mecha and pilot scale. One of my favorite parts here, you have pilots cannot damage mecha, and conversely, mecha weapons immediately kill pilots on a hit. Quite obvious. So, yeah, if you're out of the mech and there's another one you're looking at, your character or pilot is probably done. Narratively. It's up to the game master, really. So, then you have initiative. You have hit dice. You got attack and defending. Now, for attack and defending, it does say to attack, you generally test power to determine if you hit. When you are attacked, you test mobility to avoid taking damage. As I see this, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is a player-facing game. The player rolls the dice. Game Master, during combat, so far, doesn't look like they do much dice rolling. So if, again, for solo play, that's probably a positive. There's less rules to track, or less dice rolling on both ends. Talks about melee damage. Opportunity attacks, which is a great mechanic to use. You don't have to house rule it. So if you're close by and try to walk away or vice versa, you can have a chance to attack when they're caught off guard. Heavy weapons, they give you a +2 for both attack and damage rolls. So if I'm reading that right, you roll a d20 to do the power attack, essentially. That emphasizes that it's harder for your mech to wield a heavier weapon. But, because you're, again, it's roll under system. But, +2 damage on top of what you would roll if it hits. So, it's harder, but there's an extra reward. Okay, so then there's unarmored damage. Critical damage, so you roll a 1, critical, obviously 20 is a fail, critical fail. Difficult terrain. Hidden, so there is some tactics here. Armor points. Let's read this through together, because I was not confused, but it was a little, kind of a double take. And I'll show you. I think it's a point reduction system to curve the damage taken, basically nullify until your armor is depleted. Then you start essentially taking damage to your physical mech itself. There we go. Sorry, I couldn't click. Your mecha's armor provides protection by reducing income damage with armor points. Each type of armor, light or heavy, provides armor points. When you're dealt damage, you can choose to spend a number of your remaining armor points to reduce the damage by an equal amount. Once the points are used to reduce damage, you must complete a rest to regain them. If you have no armor points left, you take damage as normal. Think of an OSR game where your shield or your actual worn armor actually depletes, actually can take physical damage, has an HP. Like, I think GURPS does that. I believe GURPS does that. But essentially, games with more crunchier rules, you can track HP for the actual armor. And it can sustain damage before affecting your actual physical being, your actual self. That's how I'm seeing this. So you can choose. It says you can choose to spend damage or spend these points, hence why it's called armor points, AP, to nullify the damage. And because it's mech on mech combat, or depending on how you take the rules, mech versus kaiju, for example, you can use your shield or use your armor to take that damage. That's how I'm seeing it. Then you have your reactor die. This is the more unique. This is probably one of my favorite rules here. It's a usage die system. So you keep rolling a die and it can decrease if you roll 1 and 2 for each roll. The lowest is D40, D4, D20 is the highest, obviously. Let's read through this one together because, like I said, this is one of my favorite mechanics. And it's referred to a lot. Or it's basically, the mechanic does come up quite a bit. The reactor is the heart of your mecha, and many abilities rely on its energy. Your mech chassis has a reactor die type associated with it. When you take the same action twice in one turn, use certain chassis or module abilities, or take damage from a critical hit, you must roll your reactor die. If the roll is 1 or 2, your reactor die is downgraded to the next lowest die in the following chain, D20 down to D40. When you roll 1 or 2 on a D4 reactor die, your mecha becomes overheated. Your reactor die remains a D4 until you complete a rest. And there is a table over here when you get disabled, which we'll get to in a second. So, segue here, or kind of a tangent. My favorite game, one of my more favorite RPGs, lesser known ones, is Chronica Fadalis. And it has for your coin purse, your money, essentially, it is a usage die. When you buy something that's either equal to or greater than your value in comparison to what you have on you, you do that roll and it can decrease how much money you have. It's an abstract representation of your currency, of your money. That's how this one works too. It's not a finite number. It's not an actual absolute number. It is a die. And it can be a good thing, or if you hit that 1 or 2, you get downgraded. So it does give you some playroom to last a bit longer if it was an actual fixed number that decreases. So that's why I think the usage die system in any RPG is, in my opinion, underrated or underutilized. And when I see it pop in RPG, I get very giddy. And I'm glad it's in this game. So here's the overheated mecha. Disable mecha. Then you have the disable mecha possibilities of the D8. You roll a D8 to see what happens. Resting repairing, you have your short rest and your long rest. And you have gaining levels. There is a leveling system. Here is the character creation system. Building your mech. Building your mecha. Now, it's a slightly different compared to just rolling 3d6 down the chain. There is one catch. So, when you roll your attributes, you do 3d6 down the line from power, mobility, system, and presence. But if you roll a 15 or higher on any one attribute, you must roll the next attribute 2d6 plus 3 instead of 3d6. Once they're all rolled, you can swap 2, which is a common house rule in many RSR games, like in Karen, I believe. So that 2d6 plus 3 basically means your mech can't be too powerful. It restricts you a bit. You're strong in one trait, one attribute, but the next one has to take a slight hit. I like that. Kind of control the chaos. Then you choose your pilot. There's some options. You have Commander, Engineer, Maverick, and Quipster. Choose your chassis. There are Brawler, Scout, Striker, and Titan, so 4 of each. Choose a module, which gives you a little add-on. Buy equipment if you choose not to use the starting sets. And here are the pilots. You have Commander, you have your Engineer, Maverick, and Quipster. They all have their quirks. And then there's a record of your character's essential history, or what drives them, why they do what they do. For example, 9 says, I once took pity on an enemy and let them live. Well, that could narratively have consequences. Maybe the enemy came back for revenge. So, then you have the Brawler, you have the Scout, you have the Striker, then you have the Titan. These are your mechs. They all have their own hit die, damage die, and reactor die. The Striker looks like to be the best all around. The Titan does the most damage at D10. The Scout probably the fastest, I'm assuming, are great at long shot, light armor, light weapons, but fast. Then a brawler, good for close range combat. So there is a balance between each option. You have a call sign, so give your mecha name, your forename, and your surname. Tanker, Zenith. Modules, there are a lot of modules. So modules, literally just add-ons. You can put some special items or equipment to your mech, and you can gain more as you level up. And you can also create custom modules, so you can go beyond what these lists have. You have your offensive modules, you have your defensive, utility modules, then we have equipment. Like I said, if you don't go with the equipment that starts here in your mechs, you can buy your own. And there are some choices. You have basic, you have weapon qualities, you have consumables. Then we get to the bestiary, the enemies. There is a simple system to create enemies on the fly. They have stat blocks. There are some presets here, some, like I said, a bestiary in a way. So you can just kind of pick and choose as you want. And then there are some monsters, some kaiju, beyond just your typical faction human giant robots. The artwork in this is good, just black and white, pretty simple, nothing distracting. Then you have game mastering tools. You have some Kickstarters. You have some quest developers here. Mission generator, mission openers, mission hazards, complications, environments, enemy tactics, and loot. Then a few extra rules. You have rerouting power, environmental hazards, skill challenges, boss fights, collateral damage, mecha crews, pilot. So mecha crews meaning, more than one person in the mech. So like think Pacific Rim 2 for one brain, essentially. Pilot missions and downtime. Downtime is very important. Then you have, it says here, while the mecha hack is completely setting agnostic, you can utilize to tell stories from all kinds against a variety of backdrops. So there's one here, Lodestar Alpha. Factions, locations, and the OGL, of course, for copyright protection. And then there is the character sheet. So I like the character sheet. It's simple, clean, and matches the theme of the book. Call sign, pilot, chassis, level. You have your armor points, hit points, power, mobility, system strength. System presence, your hit die, damage die, and reactor die. Plenty of room to write. Pilot ability, chassis abilities, equipment, and the modules. And here's a quick little player aid, which all fits in one page. And that is the mecha hack. So that's it. Pretty simple. D20 roll under system. And it has that OSR feel. It could be deadly. Maybe not. Depending on what your game is. I think it looks ideal for solo play. On my channel, the only real thing I've ever tried with giant mechs at all was the one-page rules, my wargaming phase in here. I used Mech War, but I used mechs to use the one-page rules system agnostic feature. And I still have those models, luckily. With this mecha hack, could be a good combo for a future video. Let me know what you guys think. And if you want to see me try a one-shot using this game. Now, when I found this, I found another mech-related RPG. Not going to do a review on this channel. I might do one in the future, but this one is inspired by Fate. Mecha vs. Kaiju. So definitely one more against the Kaiju themselves. At least it's based on the cover. So it's a bigger book. It's Fate powered, so I'm assuming it has a lot of house rules modified by Fate. Or for Fate. So that's really it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment, and ring that bell to stay notified for future videos. And as always, I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.